love for Sally's to do that. But I will tell you, I brought my wife and kids, and we went to zoo parties in West Haven. You guys should try it. I'm telling you, it's very good. And while I'm here with you, and I'm very pleased to do that, my wife is taking, and our kids are in elementary school, taking them to the home of the burger, Louis Lunch. And they've already reported to me it's the best burger they've ever had. So I'm excited for that. So thanks for having me. It's Florida Man Returns to Yale. And I think back when Florida Man first went to Yale, at least this Florida man, that was over 25 years ago. And I didn't know, honestly, I didn't even know colleges were liberal. I was up here. I was not necessarily involved in politics. I was a baseball player. I show up on Yale's campus the first day wearing jean shorts, which was what we did in the Tampa Bay, flip-flops, cut-off T-shirt, and I thought that was normal. Well, it was where I came from, not so much up here. We had kids from Andover and Exeter, all these other places, a little bit different. So it was definitely kind of a culture shock. But then I was getting involved in actually going to class, trying to learn things, just interacting with some of the students. And the orthodoxy and the ethos struck me, because the motto that I would see everywhere was for God, for country, and for Yale, which honestly, I love that, right? But then I'd be in the class, or I'd see some of the nonsense that happened on campus. They were certainly not for God, I can tell you that. They hated America. It was supposedly America was the root of all ills. And then the campus orthodoxy was such that I don't think it was living up to really the mission of preparing people to be strong leaders for American society going forward and all folks of that. So parents will say, oh my gosh, look at all the craziness that's going on. And I don't think it was crazier in my time than it is now. Absolutely not. But, parents are worried about, hey, I send the kid away for 4 years and the college is going to undo all 4. Well, I think I just rejected everything that I learned here in terms of the political orthodoxy. And I can tell you, I am definitely one of the few people, unquestionably, that can say I went through both Harvard and Yale and came out more conservative than when I went in. That's not easy to do. And so now Florida Man comes back to New Haven, and we're here at the Buckley Institute. And I think it's fitting because I can say, as I formed belief in America, belief in the enduring principles that made the country great, understanding conservative approach to governance and all these things, that I think I got the foundation here, but then accumulated additional knowledge by serving in the military, doing all these other things. I can come here today as now having been elected twice in Florida, third largest state, that conservative principles and conservative policies work. Leftist policies and principles do not work. And all you got to do is look what's happened over the past 6 or 7 years. Compare the New York, compare the California, compare Illinois, and compare the free state of Florida. Yes, as conservatives, we can use Florida as an example to say we have won and they have lost when it comes to governing. Now, how do you do this? William F. Buckley famously said that the goal at the time was to stand athwart history and yell stop, to stop the advances of the militant left, communism, all the things that were percolating at the time. And while I appreciate that and understand that that was something that was advised for the time, I can tell you when I became governor of Florida, I knew that that was not enough. Merely stopping further advances of the left was not going to get us where we needed to go. I had to regain all the territory that the left has taken over these many years. I had to make sure that the institutions in our society, government and some non-government, were not corrupted by leftism. My job was to protect the people I represent from the pathologies of the political left. And so we went on offense. and our goal was to recapture this ground. And so look what we did in K-12. Yeah, universal school choice. Every single parent in Florida can send their kid where any school they want to, and they get money for scholarships if it's private. But we've also reintroduced civics requirements in our schools. We have a major speech and debate program that we actually now name the prize after Charlie Kirk, and we're getting $50,000 scholarship to the winner. We beat the teacher unions. We have no more automatic deduction of union dues in the state of Florida. Teachers are not signing up in enough numbers, and we're going to end up decertifying these left-wing teacher unions. Look at higher education. Yeah, we were the first state to eliminate DEI from our public higher education institutions. We don't need discrimination, exclusion, and indoctrination in Florida, and we don't need it anywhere in the country. But we've also instituted reforms so that now in Florida, at our public universities, all tenured professors must undergo review once every 5 years and can be terminated for poor performance. So you see professors leaving Florida, the media, well, they don't talk about the ones we recruit in. They talk about leave. Oh, a brain drain. And I think to myself, Marxist professors leaving Florida is not bad for Florida. That's a good thing for Florida. And so we're doing that. And we're also establishing civic institutes like our Hamilton Center at University of Florida, like our Adam Smith Center for Economic Freedom at Florida International University. I even have a liberal arts college called New College that was basically a Marxist commune when I became governor. Left of the left, no grades, low enrollment, low scores. I actually wanted to close it because it's honestly it's valuable real estate right there in Sarasota. But the community liked it, so I'm like, all right, if we're going to fund it, so I filled the board with conservatives. They fired the president. They hired a conservative president. They were the first school in America to eliminate DEI. They abolished gender studies, and they said, we are going to be a classical liberal arts college. And so now the enrollment's high, test scores are up, and we're going to be the best liberal arts college in the country for conservatives. If we not already are, we will be very, very soon. We've also fought against corrupted elites across various portions of our society. I mean, we live in a country like when COVID hit, I'm having to make decisions that I'm looking at data and I'm reflecting on my principles, and then I'm looking at what some of these people like Fauci were saying. They were not engaged in medical science. They were engaged in political science. And it was very clear that this medical establishment had been corrupted by leftist ideology. It's very clear when you see these pediatric organizations promoting gender mutilation for minors that something has really gone amiss. And so we fought back against all of those, and we've won battles. We beat George Soros on crime. I'm the only governor in America that has removed Soros-funded prosecutors from office. We've stood up to corporate America, including a pretty large company that some of you may have heard of in Central Florida, because they are not going to be simply be allowed in Florida without a fight to impose a leftist agenda on our state. It used to be businesses would focus on returning value to their shareholders. Well, if you're going to engage in leftist activism, we're going to fight back. So we kneecapped ESG in the state of Florida. We beat Disney in that whole skirmish. And now, you know what? These businesses don't want to mess with the left. They used to be scared of the left. Now, because we stood up, they know, well, you know what? I may get some blowback the other way if we do that. And so I think that's much better for everyone involved. The trial lawyers, we did huge tort reform on the trial lawyers. They fund this money to Democrats. That money is no longer there. So what we've done is not just win superficial victories. We cut a tax, we did that, which is fine. But if all you're doing is superficial victories, you can win a string of battles, but you will lose the war. We have defanged the left in the state of Florida. They have less access to power in the state of Florida than they have ever had in the modern history of the state of Florida because we led. And look, it's not all just about underlying ideology. It's not all just about power politics. The average person isn't necessarily thinking in those terms. They're not reading William F. Buckley. They're not doing this. They want to know, how does this affect their lives? What are the results? And the results that we've been able to do are second to none. Just look at Florida's budget and debt and tax situation. So our state now has millions of more residents than New York State does. And yet, New York State's budget is more than twice the size of the budget of the state of Florida. Their roads aren't better than ours. Their education's not better than ours. Their services aren't better than ours. I certainly wouldn't want to go to the DMV, in New York, especially when Mandami gets in. It's interesting. New York City has 8 million people, and this is even before Mandami takes over the grocery stores. Their budget's bigger than Florida's budget with 23.5 million people. And so we're able to do that at half the cost, and yet major initiatives for infrastructure acceleration, environmental restoration, education, you name it, we've done it. Debt. Take all the debt that Florida's had for 180 years. Just since I've been governor, we've retired half of it on my watch. And we now have the lowest per capita debt of any place in the United States, AAA credit rating, all that. Of course, that's what we have. Taxes. No income tax in the state of Florida, and the second lowest state tax burden in the country. And although property taxes are local, we're working on placing an initiative on the ballot so that Florida residents can take their primary residence, that's homestead, and exempt that from property tax. These local governments have expanded their budgets by 50% in some cases over the last 5 years. You could take every Florida resident's homesteaded homes off the tax rolls, and all the local governments would have to do is go back to 2020 budget levels, and they could do it. So when people say it can't be done, it can. We are going to work on that. That's going to be huge relief for people. We're ranked the #1 economy in all 50 states 3 years in a row by both CNBC and by U.S. News and World Report, neither of whom want to rank Florida 1 if they can help it. I can tell you that. And since I've been governor, we've had more adjusted gross income move in to the state of Florida than has ever moved in to another American state over a similar period of time in the entire history of the United States of America. Education, as I mentioned, universal school choice, 500,000 students on scholarship, 400,000 in charter schools, public schools, which if you just took our charter population, that's more students than a lot of states' entire K-12 population. But if that were a separate state, charter population only would rank top 5 for student performance in the United States. Higher education, we've been ranked #1 now public for 10 years, partially because since I've been governor, we have not allowed 1 penny of in-state tuition increase, $6,300 to go to our state universities. That is by far the lowest in the country. Look at crime, 50-year low in the crime rate. You didn't see me out there marching when they were talking about defunding the police. You didn't see us, our cities go ablaze when the BLM riots were occurring during the Summer of Love in 2020. And in fact, not only do we stand by law enforcement when people flee places like New York or Philly or Chicago or Seattle and get a job in Florida law enforcement, we start them off with a $5,000 signing bonus. So on all these things, these are big, tangible results that show that we matter and that our policies are working. Now, part of the way we were able to get this done is my philosophy is very simple. I was elected to lead. I was not elected to follow. And I had a very, Florida was very tight politically for many decades. I won election by less than 1% of the vote. And a lot of people told me, it's a very delicate political balance here. You got to watch, don't get too out there. You got to kind of bide your time, keep your head down, don't rock the boat. I understood that. In some respects, that was the safer advice, but I rejected the advice. I may have gotten 50% of the vote, but I earned 100% of the executive power, and I was going to do that to advance my vision and to bring about good results. I have never, since I've been governor, taken a poll about any individual issue. because it doesn't matter to me what the poll says. It ain't going to change what I believe. And you know what? Even if people aren't for you at the time, if you set out a vision, if you execute that vision, if you deliver results, they will move in your favor when that happens. And the great example of that was during COVID. The best decisions I made, I wouldn't be able to say we're #1 economy, all these other things, had we had the same approach to COVID as California or Illinois or New York. Although, you know, Illinois, governor locks them down, and then his family's down in Florida just living it up on their thing. You know, it became a cottage industry. We'd find all these lockdown politicians that were imposing these mandates, criticizing Florida publicly. Then you'd see them at the Fort Lauderdale Yacht Club, Mayor of Philly, AOC, you know, you name it, you'd see them there. And so it became a total joke. But the things we were doing in those first 8 to 12 weeks of COVID, making sure schools had to be open for every parent, you know, making sure businesses could operate, making sure we could do all these things, all of that was very unpopular. And not just because the media was attacking me, Democrats, most Republicans, you know, were saying you can't dissent from Fauci. You got to listen to Fauci. That's what was happening at the time. And a lot of people told me, you know, you were killing yourself politically, because I think I was. Like, look, I don't poll, but like, you know, people would say he was like one of the most popular governors. Now everyone's attacking him. They're like, oh, he's losing support, all this stuff. And, you know, as a leader, there's only certain times where it really matters. And COVID was one where it really mattered. Is someone going to fight for you? Is someone going to stand up for you when the chips are down? Or are you just going to try to protect your political hide? I did not get elected to put my personal interests above the interests of the people that I serve. I cared more about preserving their jobs than I did about preserving my own. And so I said, let the chips fall where they may. And then now, you can't find someone in Florida that disagrees with what we did during COVID. They all claim they wanted the schools and the businesses and all that. Like, no one will say the otherwise. Wasn't popular at the time, but that's what you have to do. And so we brought people to our side. The other thing is Florida's had this huge political transformation. We were a one-point state for 25 years. If you go back the decade I got elected, 2010 governor, 1-point margin. 2012 presidential, 1-point margin. 2014 governor, 1-point margin. 2016 presidential, 1-point margin. 2018 governor, me, less than 1-point margin. So that's the Florida that we had. And when I walked into the governor's office, we had 300,000 more registered Democrats in the state than Republicans. Today, we have 1.4 million more Republicans than Democrats in Florida. So you have never seen that type of transformation in any state in this country in modern history, certainly not in favor of the Republican Party. And I think the way we were able to do it, yes, the results were very important. But we governed under a banner of what Ronald Reagan said were bold colors, not pale pastels. The way you win big, and that translated into a re-election from 1 point in 18 to the biggest Republican victory in the history of the state in 22, 1.5 million vote margin, 20-point victory. Nobody thought that was possible. We're winning Miami by double digits. We won Palm Beach, the first Republican to do that in 40 years. We were turning areas from blue to red and taking some areas that were light red and making them blood red. And that just was a transformation of the political map. But we did it with bold colors. We drew a sharp contrast with the pathologies of the left. Every voter in Florida knew, you know, if you don't want a kindergartner being told they can change their gender, then you better vote for the governor, because the Democrats want to do that to you. If you want to make sure that your kid can go to class without having to wear a mask for 8 hours a day, you better vote for the governor, because he's the one that's saving us, you know, from the barbarians of the gate. If you want to make sure that we're not a magnet for illegal immigration, you better vote for the governor, because we know the Democrats aren't going to do it. So everyone knew that there was a very stark choice to be made. And that's only because when you're milquetoast, voters don't know where you stand. The differences can be blurred. And I had confidence that the conservative positions were the right positions. And so we did it, and we showed that that's the case. There is no way you would have gone from 300,000 in the hole to 1.4 million in the black with voter registration. if you were some squish Republican. I'm telling you that would not have happened, and most of the successes we had would not have happened. So, as I think about Florida's success, and I think about some of the things that obviously Bill Buckley fought against and fought for, we think about, okay, there was that time, now we're kind of in our time. Well, what about going forward? And the thing that I remind people of, because, is conservatism relevant or not? People will say, oh, this, and they'll kind of caricature it as like, well, this policy from the 80s or this or that. I'm talking about an underlying set of values. I'm talking about principles that are enduring. They're not limited to one. How you apply those principles may be different, and you got to apply them properly for the issues of the day. And I think we had to tackle issues that were probably different than what Bill Buckley was writing about every day back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And that's fine, but the underlying principles don't change. No matter what the media says, North is still North. No matter what the pundits say, North is still, no matter what the online influencers say, North is still North. No matter where the winds of public opinion blow, North is still North. And so we have to be dedicated to the truth. We have to understand that our founding fathers got it right when they set out to create a constitution, understanding that there were defects in human nature, understanding you had to limit power, understanding you needed checks and balances. And I think one of the things we see that's developed, there's a saying, all great causes begin as a movement, transform into a business, and degenerate into a racket. And I think whatever is on the right now, we are very much in a racket stage. I mean, you have people that can monetize outrage online. Some of these people that are always out there, they're getting paid for certain positions. There's a whole cottage industry of how this is going. That's obviously not staying on true north. So you got to navigate that. You got to know that that's a problem. But the values cannot change. They don't change. These are things that are enduring. National security and foreign policy. I can tell you, as somebody who served in the Iraq conflict back in, almost 20 years ago, there are things that the country has done that have been some missteps when it comes to foreign policy. But we need to have a foreign policy. We need to have peace through strength. We need to deter bad actors. And so while I can say we shouldn't be nation building, we shouldn't be social engineering in these foreign lands, and obviously there have been interventions like the Obama-Hillary intervention in Libya, which was a total catastrophe, and some others that have happened. But you also say, when President Trump took action against the Iranian nuclear facilities, that was the right thing to do to defend America. That had beneficial effects with other hostile nations seeing that the president was willing to show strength and pull the trigger when the time was right. So we have to have a foreign policy. I think Bill Buckley was skeptical of some of the hyper-adventurism, some of the nation building, some of the social engineering, and I think we should be. But I don't think we can say, because we steer clear of those excesses, that we're not going to be committed to being strong and deterring the very real threats that are out there. Immigration is another interesting thing. Obviously, the Biden opened the border was a disaster. The border's largely been closed, which I think is good. You got a lot of people here that you got to deal with, which I know we're helping to do that. And, it's like when Biden was president, he wouldn't deport anybody. So we helped doing whatever we can. We sent people to the border. We even flew some to Martha's Vineyard, beautiful place. They didn't really want them. That whole episode showed me because they called out the National Guard and they deported them off the vineyard the next day. And this was just 50 of them. And, these border towns were getting overrun. We had places in Florida getting overrun. So you had 50. And it's like, man, Martha's Vineyard, it's a Tom Homan deportation policy cloaked under a veneer of virtue signaling and social justice rhetoric, because they were happy to wave their finger at other people and tell them the minute they had to deal with it, they did not want to do with it. So we did a lot, and now you're in a situation where we're helping the Trump administration with removal operations. But, you have some strain on the right that says, oh, no, illegal immigration is bad. Legal immigration, no matter what, is good. And wait a minute. Now, I'm not saying any of it's that it's all bad or what, but is bringing 10 million people from like Somalia and dumping them into Georgia, is that good because it's legal? I think you have to think critically about what are we doing with an immigration policy, and is it benefiting the American people? Is it helping to promote a strong American culture? We should never bring people into this country who hate America. And when I when I look at like Mindami's dad and listen to the stuff he's saying about America being the story, I'm like, why would we have wanted somebody like that to come? I mean, especially if you think America is so bad. So we have to be smart. It's lazy thinking to say anything that's legal must necessarily be good. Some of these companies game these systems with bringing cheap labor. So there's a whole host of things, but don't do what Europe did. Europe did a mass migration that was legal, that was intentional, and it's proven to be disastrous. So as conservatives, we must think more critically. And the final thing that conservatives have to wrestle with is the proper approach to artificial intelligence. If you look at what's going on, it's a handful of very big companies that are driving most of this. This is not purely market-driven. You know, they are seeking subsidy, they are seeking guarantee. They even tried to get through Congress a 10-year moratorium that would strip the rights of Florida and all other states from doing anything related to AI. And I think it's because they want to drop data centers wherever they want. They want to be able to go. When they do the data centers, it takes up as much power as a city of 500,000 people. That is going to cause more costs for average folks. And so that's not purely market-driven. They want some, and we should not, as conservatives, be supporting a set of policies where I think the inevitable outcome that they want to do as a risk mitigation strategy is make it too big to fail. They're going to say, yeah, you know, we got how many hundreds of billions of dollars of loans, we got to beat China and AI, we got to do all that, too big to fail. And even OpenAI was asking for a government backstop recently. So that is not conservative to be indulging in that. And oh, by the way, these companies, many of them, they were the villains of COVID. They were censoring the truth. I would have videos put up with really renowned people, and YouTube and Google would take it down off a state governor's site with my Surgeon General and everybody doing all this stuff. So be very, very careful. You also have a situation where these companies think they should be able to have unfettered access to all intellectual property without providing compensation. I don't want to throw out copyright and intellectual property just so ChatGPT has more ability to crank out. A lot of it is honestly inaccurate analysis that they do, but that's what they want to do. We shouldn't let that happen. We also should protect individuals. Can they create videos of you put words in your mouth and then have that negatively impact your life or your business without any consequence? I don't think that that's something that's good. What about our kids? Has social media been a net positive for young people? I can tell you, as governor, I've looked, it has not been a net positive. It's been a net negative. Artificial intelligence potentially be way worse for all these young people. And then finally, it's just a question of, who governs society? Our founding fathers understood human nature was flawed. People are apt to abuse power. And that is no different if you're running a technology company or if you're a member of Congress or if you're in the executive branch. So you have a situation with artificial intelligence, garbage in, garbage out. Who controls the data set is going to have an immense amount of power the more this takes hold in society, because a tweak here, a tweak there, and all of a sudden you can create a completely artificial reality. I think we've got to be rooted in truth. I don't think human beings I think human beings have a duty to make sure we're thinking for ourselves. We can never be relieved of that duty. We must make sure that we're standing up for those values. I welcome technology that enhances the human experience. There's things that can make workers more productive, businesses more efficient, medical advances, great. But there's also a transhumanist element in all this where they want to basically wipe out human agency and turn things over to machines. That is not conservative, and that is certainly not right. So you young people, you're going to be dealing with these issues for a long time, and I can tell you we're going to continue to lead on it in the state of Florida. So the final thing I'll say is, we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of the founding of the United States of America. And I think it's an important anniversary to reflect on, particularly for our young people. because it really was a monumental moment in human history. And that when the founders went to Philadelphia in 1776 and signed their name to the Declaration of Independence, that is not like emoting on social media would be today or just doing. It was real, meaningful, and risky what they did. They said they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and they were 100% right. These were all very successful people in the colonies. They had a lot to lose, and they knew if the revolution failed, the penalty for each one of them, 100%, was death. And so they persevered. They had ideas about human freedom and human liberty. They had to work through that. They eventually had to go back to Philadelphia next decade, 1787. They needed a constitution, and they hammered that out. And when they entered the convention, the one thing they knew, because they had studied the history of every republic and the history of mankind, the one thing they knew, every one of those experiences, the one common thread was simple, and it was this: every one of them had failed. And so they understood it fell to the United States of America to determine once and for all, can people really govern themselves? Can you have a society based on the idea that our rights are God-given, not government-granted, that we live under a rule of law, not the rule of individual men, that we can have a limited government where those powers are checked and balanced and they don't erode individual freedom? Or is mankind forever destined to live under various forms of despotism? And they believed that the United States of America would ultimately answer that question, but they knew what they were doing was not the end of the story. When Ben Franklin walked out of that convention, he was asked, "Did you give us a republic or a monarchy?" His response was, "A republic if you can keep it." Because they understand you can have the best constitution in the world, you can have the best Declaration of Independence in the world. These things do not run on autopilot. They require each generation of Americans to stand up and defend freedom when it's under threat. Sometimes that may mean even putting on a uniform, risking your life, and indeed giving the last full measure of devotion for service to this country. For other times, maybe the sacrifices aren't as significant, but if you're somebody that's getting involved as a parent and you're concerned about what's happening in schools, you go to that school board meeting and you let those liberal bureaucrats have it. You are helping to keep it. If you're a student at a place like Yale, and it's not kosher to be talking about conservative ideas, but you're willing to stand up and take scorn from some of your classmates and stand firm for what's right, you're doing your part to keep it. So we have an opportunity as we come on 250 to acknowledge, and I'm proud to say, Florida, we show that we can govern ourselves. We show that constitutional government can work. We show that conservative values can carry the day. And so going forward, the question that we face on the eve of the 250th is the same question, they have. Our republic, can we keep it? Thank you all. God bless you.